In love. So welcome to, I'm renewing my reading the news. So tens of thousands are escaping the Kurdish area in Syria because of the Turkish attack. I don't think I've ever been so politically agitated and upset, mainly because I know what the Kurds have done for the region. They're the only ones who are fighting. I think there are children and women and people being massacred by Turkey, and the world is silent. And now I want to talk about it. Yes, Shosha, because we're Jewish, we can speak about it. So, there was this attack on the synagogue and made huge headlines. And what disturbed me is, first of all, they said it's a miracle. I don't know. There was a big wooden door. The man was an idiot. He wanted to storm into a synagogue which had video security watch, so they were able to see him shooting outside. The fact that he shot warning shots outside was the miracle, because he's an idiot. The other thing I'm very upset about is they put, it's not an attack on Jews, it's an attack on society, first of all. That's very important to note. And those poor people that were murdered in the kebab stand and one just walking by, those people were I can't imagine their relatives. I mean, yes, it was planned as a Jewish attack, but the people that were murdered were just part of the society around, and they could have been a Jew, could have been not a Jew, and it turned out not to be Jews. So it should be clear that when you allow racism, everybody's going to get hurt. Everybody. Just like in the Second World War, a lot of German people were also killed. I mean, sorry to say that. It sounds horrible. No, it's not. Yeah, the Jews were targeted. Yes, the Jews were murdered and killed and tortured horrible ways, which made them realize that Germany is not a place to live if they want to thrive as a culture. And then we built Israel here. I mean, Israel was the land of Israel was already populated by Jews before the Holocaust, very important to say, but definitely there was a big push, and I don't know if Israel would have been recognized as a state, and maybe it would have been like the Kurdish people. If we hadn't had a strong army and a state, we could have been just like the Kurds, fleeing while we're being bombarded by some army who didn't like our presence. So it's very, very important to realize how important it is to have a state of your own when you want to survive in this region. And I think it's really important to know that if I was a Jew hiding in that synagogue, I would get on the first plane here, no matter how tough things are. It's expensive here. It's not an easy place. However, there wouldn't be even a question in my mind. Hiding from people who want to murder me because I'm a Jew in a country where this massacre was by millions, and just there was a miracle, great, I'm just going to continue to live here. I don't think so. Who wants to live in a society where a person can just shoot at you like that? People say, oh, in Israel it's also dangerous. That's true in one way. On the other hand, I think we're working as a society here to get rid of racism. We're not quite there, but a lot of good things are going on here. A lot of really good things. And we have to remember that. God, to hide, to relive the biggest trauma in Jewish modern history is, for me, a no-no. No, we're not going to anywhere near that country anytime soon. Maybe on a trip, to Berlin to meet friends, or I don't know, but no, Europe is not for us. That's become very clear from every country there. So, except maybe Denmark, I don't know. Who knows? But things change, it's not the same. And our haters are fortified now. All sorts. So going back to the Kurdish people, it's horrible what's happening to them. It's horrible. And the world usually is able to, like, for 2 people murdered or 3 people murdered, there's the headlines. But for all these people, I mean, what does Erdogan want, that horrible man? I mean, I just don't even begin to understand the mindset of this terrible dictator who, on the one hand, does he want his country overrun by extremists, and then the Kurdish people who are not extremists, he's fighting them, and he's like, I think this ethnic cleansing, and the world is silent. Why? I don't know. No wonder so many Turkish people choose to live in Europe rather than to stay in it. But on the other hand, yeah, it's allowing racism. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. So we're going to Sukkot soon. It's this holiday where you sit in booths. Doesn't make sense to me at all. At all. You sit in these booths because they're already decorated. You have all these symbols, and you relive living in the desert. I don't know. It's like in a booth. In a way, it was one of my favorite family holidays when I was a child. My grandparents had a little booth, sukkah, downstairs in their backyard. And it was just nice the way we eat there and the family come together. But nowadays, it's different. So, very bad news for kids. One child, a sweet little boy, and the other sweet little boy, very cute boys. They were run down by one driver had drugs, and the other one, I don't know, just speeded away towards a group of children. One is Jewish, one is Arab. I don't know the ethnic identity of the ones who ran them over. I think it's mixed, or one was Jew, one was Arab. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but we do have too many people driving with drugs and alcohol in Israel because the police just doesn't do enough. A woman that was murdered, her husband is saying all kinds of nonsense. It makes it look like a suicide. It's horrible. It's always the same type of women that are very giving and loving, like she is a social worker. It's really tragic. And on that note, I want to mention Chris Waats. Chris Waats is still making headlines. A book published, letters from Chris Waats. Who is this person? Who cares what he writes? And just now last night, I saw a man in Massachusetts, a man who writes children's books, murdered his entire family. 3 beautiful children and a wife. And that's not going to make headlines. You know why? Because the only reason Shannon Watts' story made headlines is because she was constantly online. And it's so sad. Because he's not much, and the way he was lying. But all these guys who murder their families are obviously very disturbed individuals. To buy a book where he writes letters and then he tells the details how he murdered his children, why would you do that to yourself? Life is so short. Why are so many YouTube channels? I can count on my hands like at least 10 channels running on Chris Waats, like for a year now. It's been a year. It's August 13th. We're now October 11th, and people are still running major YouTube channels, and they have so many views. This is so unhealthy for our society to focus on their negativity. We should focus on getting justice for the victims. But I would have loved it if people talked about Shannon's life more and stories about her. But that doesn't interest people. People are interested in violence. I don't know why. I'm not interested in violence. So people need to reprogram their minds and brains and to stop feeding those channels, because they all are there for the profit. They're not nice people who care about victims of violence. Otherwise, they would talk about victims of violence. There are people that are there to egg you on and to add, like a lot of the media, to encourage people to focus on all these murderers and make them media stars. No, I don't care. In France, I read that every third day a woman is murdered. So why is this focus on Chris Waats? What makes him different than a French guy who kills his woman, or an Israeli guy, or an Arab guy, or anyone around the world who kills their wives? So I was very horrified to read statistics that France is leading in murder of women. So much for romantic life, you know? You think, oh, France is a romantic country and it's so beautiful, and then you see that the men are murdering their wives. Same goes for Germany's up there, Switzerland is up there in statistics, Europe is way up there. So it's not only in the Muslim cultures, and it's very shocking that in this kind of atmosphere, Chris Waats is making headlines as if he's unique. And this is something important to note. He's not unique at all. He's a disturbed person who chose to take the lives of his pregnant wife and children. But there are men doing this all over the world. Not to mention the ones that are not murdering, but just really abusing the women and the children. This has to stop. As we speak, the kindergarten teacher accused of abuse has been released from jail for, she's going to be, what is it called? She's going to stay home. She did such horrific things to small little children. It's a horrible case that shook Israel. I don't want to get into the abuse because it's disgusting, but I cannot believe that abusing little helpless children doesn't get you into prison. So we have Nobel Literature Prize, Peter Handke, the Austrian, and Olga Tokarczuk, the Polish. They won Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Literature Prize. I did read him. What I like about his novels, they're very short. They're not very long, which is really good because I don't like to read long novels, and I think they're more intense. I definitely agree with the choice about him. So I'm just sad that there's not more cultural awareness. I would like to see people from different cultures recognized, because it would be much better that every time another culture would be recognized, and that we could be exposed to different writers. I love the Afghanistan writer Husseini, who writes about the condition of women in Afghanistan under war. And there's so many talented writers throughout the Middle East. Why isn't anybody recognized? Come on, man, it's time to give the Nobel Literature Prize to somebody in the Middle East, in Asia, Africa. We have talented writers all over the world, so it's about time to stop giving the prize to Europeans only. So anyway, so she's the woman who wrote this, the Polish woman. She was fighting racism in Poland. That's good. That's very, very good. And Israel is going to print 3 of her books. That's very good. Handke, I read. His father was a German soldier. He only met him when he was older. He lives in France. Good choice. And I love the way he writes. I don't remember a particular book, but I do know that he writes very short novels. And he has criticism because oh my gosh, he actually spoke at the funeral of Milosevic, the Serbian war crime. I didn't know that. That's pretty bad. So, but we have also Günter Grass, who was definitely a shady character, but he was such a talented writer. I loved his novels. So, so there's a lot of things to read today, and still 28 degrees Celsius here. So we have all the different sections. My favorite section is the literature one. So many books to read. So many books to read about war. I'm so tired of reading about war. You know what I don't like is people that don't have a lot of talent writing about their families, like if it's interesting, as if it's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Gay poetry. Yeah, we've got tons of books. Tons of books. And they're going to have a sale. You can get books for 15 shekels, which is really good because books here are really expensive. And it says good literature and cheap price. It's going to be taking place in Tel Aviv. I am not going to buy any more books, I can tell you that much. I don't have place for books. So here we have a beautiful picture of Israel and about archaeology and if this really happened, all these things really happened. Whether they happened or not, I still think it's... Oh, this is cute. Kittens on Sukkot. Lots of commercials which really irritate me, and this is like the funny section where you have jokes, but I think you have to be here in order to understand the cynical humor. So Bibi Netanyahu quotes Elvis in the Knesset. That's something everybody can relate to. Social activists, democratic school systems. They always make commercials for mattresses I'd like to have. So many commercials. Women and hormones. How to get a better sleep. Go to sleep in like normal hours, like 11 o'clock. Go according to your biological clock. Leave the phone outside your room. That is so true. It says that the melatonin in the body is affected by the screen, so don't sleep with your phone. And it says to keep the temperature comfortable, not too hot, not too cold, and comfortable pajamas. Not to do sports after 7, I agree with that. And to have a light meal. And to stop working at night till 8 o'clock. And not to drink alcohol. Not to eat warm and spicy food. And if somebody's snoring, not to sleep. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway. It says here that